The lecturer, I will be very privileged to introduce to you because he is my idol and he is one of the very favorite speakers of MCLE providers all over the Philippines and now in the world via the internet. He is a member of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, Rizal Chapter, a member of the Asociación Europea de Abogados, or the Association of European Lawyers of Madrid, Spain. He's Dean of the College of Education and Graduate School of Education of the University of Makati from 2018 to date. He is Associate Dean of the College of Law of San Sebastian College, Manila from 2006 to 2010, and then from 2016 to 2018. He is a professor of the College of Law of San Sebastian College, Manila, Arellano University School of Manila, the College of Law of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Manila, the College of Law of De La Salle University, Manila, and a lecturer of the MCLE. He is a bar reviewer in political and international law, as well as labor law and social legislation. He's a regular resource speaker for Rex Bookstore Incorporated, a review director of the licensure examination for teachers and civil service review of the Manila Review Institute, and a reviewer of the licensure examination for teachers review program. He is an author of several books. I'm counting here a lot. There's about 14. He has 14 books so far. He was born in Ilalatamusulti sa year, still very young and young looking, born in Sipocot, Camarines Sur, married to Dr. Carol R. Duka with two daughters, Celine Danica, Serena Dorothy, and two sons, Carl Denzel and Cyrus David. To speak about face-to-face versus online hearing, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dean Cecilio Duka. Good afternoon, Dean.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Daghan salamat sa pag-imbita sa akin. It's always a pleasure to be with the IBP Cebu City, kahit na face-to-face or virtual. No? So maraming salamat po. And that time is very conducive to sleeping. So hindi ko kayo sisihin kung matutulog kayo. Lalo na yung aking apelyido sa inyong lingwahe ay nakakaantok. Okay? So walay maduka ha? Until 3 o'clock. Okay? So yun. So allow me to share my screen with you para makita nyo ang West Philippine Sea. Pero hindi ho yan pag-uusapan natin dahil ang ating usapan ay yung face-to-face at saka online hearing. Now, before that, as I always tell my audience that we lawyers are the most prayerful of all the professionals. Why? In all pleadings we submit, there's always a prayer. But ito yung prayer ni Thomas More, no? Patron saint ng mga abogado. Siya ho ay lawyer, pero later on ay naging saint. Pwede pala yun. Yung abogado nagiging santo. Eh pwede naman. Pero lisod kaayo ba? Okay. So Lord, grant that I may be able in argument, accurate in analysis, strict in study, candid with clients, and honest with adversaries. Sa mga panahong ito, parang ang hirap na ho yata maging honest eh. Kaya sabi nila, honesty is such a lonely word. At ang sabi daw ho eh, kahit sa mga relasyon, wala nang tapat. Tanghali na lang ang tapat. Kasi daw para bang mga Bluetooth, pag kasama mo, connected. Pero pagka medyo nalingat ka ng konti, searching for other devices na. Okay. So sit with me at my desk and listen with me to my client's plaints. Read with me in my library and stand beside me in court so that today I shall not, in order to win a point, lose my soul. That is if you believe you have a soul. Because if you don't, that is immaterial. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, verse 36, and sabi dyan, for what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what would a man give in exchange for his soul? Sa mga panahon natin ito na konting mali mo lang, magkaka-virus, ay mas mahalaga siguro pagtuunan natin ng pansin ang ating mga kaluluwa. Ano po? Dahil hindi tayo forever dito sa mundo. Now, ang sabi naman ni Oscar Wilde, when I was young, I thought that money was the most important thing in life. Ang ganda, ano po? Now that I am old, I know that it is. Okay? Ang sabi naman ni Margaret Thatcher, It's not the creation of wealth that is wrong. What is wrong? It is the love of money for its own sake. Diba? That's why ako ho, bahala ko rin magtayo na relihiyon kasi habang naka-quarantine tayo, I realize walang lugi ang relihiyon eh. Ha? Kaya alam na ninyo yun. Tatay tayo ng saksi ni Duka. So ituturo natin ito sa mananampalataya. Ha? That for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So what would you do with the money that you have? Just give them to me and let me love them for you. Okay? So, sabi ng mga eksperto, nagkakaroon daw minsan ng screen fatigue at nagkakaroon ng stress. So medyo tingnan nyo ito nasa screen ninyo, about 5 hours. Hindi, 2 hours lang pala tayo. So 5 seconds lang. According to the experts, kapag gumagalaw daw ho yan, the one looking at them is under stress. And the faster they move, the higher is the level of stress of the one looking at that picture. Bagay, lawyering talaga is a stressful profession. Ano po? At lalo na pagka siniseryoso ninyo, pati yung mga kaso ng inyong handle, dadalhin ninyo sa bahay, ay talagang may stress kayo dyan. And according to Joseph's story, the law is a jealous mistress and requires a long and constant courtship. Pero hindi po ito yung justification ng iba, kaya may mistress. At yung another woman daw ho talaga ang nagdadala ng maraming stress sa buhay. Kasi ang tawag mistress, may stress. Ha? At yung mga mistresses daw ho, mas matapang, mas mahigpit, mas demanding kaysa tunay na misis. But I have no personal knowledge. Whatever I tell you, this is pure hearsay. Ha? Okay. So, another picture that I would like to show you, ito yung babaeng ito, tingnan niyo yung ilong niya. There's a little dot there. You concentrate your attention, your eyes into that little dot in the nose. Then after 5 to 10 seconds, you transfer your glance, your look into that white portion on the right side. And try to see what you can see. Pag nakita nyo yung nakikita ko, may nagkakita na tayo. Ito yung mga panahon na hindi pa uso yung cellphone camera. So yung mga picture kailangan pang ma-develop. Negative muna, then ma-develop. Ha? So ano ang ibig sabihin nito? Wala lang. Gusto ko lang pakita sa inyo. Lahat ba talaga kailangan may meaning? Hindi ho. Sometimes things are not what they appear to be. Di ba? At first glance, akala mo yun eh. Pero hindi pala eh. That's why, that's the beauty of lawyering. We could see what other people could not see. Because we look intently. Katulad doon ito, ano? Tagal natin tiningnan yun nandiyan sa bandang left eh. Pero it turns out na yung nasa right pala talaga. Okay? So wala namang problema dyan. Kaya lang, kailangan tumingin tayo. At yung mga quarantine protocols yata ay medyo luluwagan. So kung ano raw yung una nyong makita dito sa ipapakita ko sa inyong slide, kung ano yung una nyong makita, yan ang una nyong pupuntahan pag lumuwag na ang quarantine restrictions. Try to look for that place where you will first go. Okay? Nakita niyo kung saan kayo pupunta? Wala naman tayong pupuntahan masyado dyan eh. No? Mukhang wala eh. So if you want to have a copy of this lecture and the other lectures that I have already recorded, punta ko kayo dyan sa YouTube channel. At yan eh, libre ninyong mapapanood ng paulit-ulit itong mga lectures na ito. Kung nabitin kayo sa mga jokes, nandiyan na ho, uploaded na yung mga jokes natin dyan. At pwede nyong i-download daw yan pagka meron kayong YouTube channel or you just subscribe and you can watch freely. Okay? So trial. Eh, nung bagong abogado pa, sabi niya, huwag matakot sa trial. Kasi pag nakulong, eh bakit ba? Eh trial yun eh, di ba? Minsan nag-e-error eh. Trial and error pala. Eh ano ba ginagawa ng abogado sa korte? Practice. Eh nakulong yung kliyente. Eh sorry, practice lang. Huwag naman ganyan. Okay? So trial, according to collinsdictionary.com, is a formal meeting in a law court at which a judge and jury, kasi sa Amerika may jury system sila unlike in our case, listen to evidence and decide whether a person is guilty of a crime. This is referring to a criminal trial. Diba? Now, trial on the other hand is a coming together of parties to a dispute to present information in the form of evidence Sabi nga nila, hindi nagsisinungaling ang ebidensya, pero hindi kang gumawa ng ebidensya. Mahirap yan. In a tribunal, it's also a formal setting with the authority to adjudicate claims or disputes. So sino ba yan? Di si judge o yung hearing officer. The tribunal, which may occur before a judge, jury, or other designated trier of fact, aims to achieve resolution to their dispute. Why? Kasi ang mga tao hindi sinusunod yung gusto ni Thomas Aquinas. Ano po ba ang sabi ni St. Thomas Aquinas? The first rule of morality is do good, avoid evil. If people would just be doing good and avoiding evil, we would not resort to this kind of trial. Hindi na tayo maghuhusga kung sino ang tama at sino ang mali because everybody would be doing what is good. So trial is a search for truth. But sometimes truth is elusive. Ika nga sa Bible, John chapter 8 verse 32, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. Pasensya na po kung nagbabanggit tayo ng mga kabanata at talata sa banal na aklat. Kasi mas madali yata yumaman ang preacher kaysa lawyer, kaya nagpa-practice na ako. But don't worry, wala ho tayong love offering after my lecture. Okay. So what about a hearing? Nung si President Era po ay nasa Sandigang Bayan during the trial of his plunder case, he was in the witness stand and a question was propounded by the special prosecutor prosecuting his case. And ayun sumagot. Sabi nung justice na Sandigang Bayan, the witness should answer. Sabi ni Erap, Your Honor, I thought this is a hearing. Why is there speaking? So hearing in law is a proceeding before a court or other decision-making body or officer. Kasi hindi lang naman tayo sa korte nag-hearing, such as a government agency or a legislative committee. That's why in Article 6, Section 21 and Section 22 of the Constitution, ito ho yung legislative power to conduct inquiries in aid of re-election. In aid of legislation. Yan. Di ba? So they could conduct hearings. So kasama ho ito doon sa definition na ito. Now, hearing versus trial. Ano ba ang ginagamit natin? Sabi ho nitong si Robert Lorch in his book Democratic Process and Administrative Law, 1980 version, a hearing is generally distinguished from a trial. Why? That is usually shorter and less formal, more often. So yung trial ay formal at mahaba, pero yung hearing daw, sandali lang. Okay? But in our case, there's no much distinction between hearing and trial, di ba? Pareho natin ginagamit yan. Okay? And while watching a movie, kasi ito ang problema natin dahil hindi ka masyado nakakalabas. Kung makalabas ka, wala ka namang mapuntahang mga open establishment. So kumita ng gusto ang Netflix, at saka yung YouTube. Kung sabi nitong si Mario Puzo, through the character Thomas Hagen, a lawyer with his briefcase can steal more than 100 men with their guns. Grabe naman yan. Pambira, huwag naman ganyan. Bagay, may isang kliyenteng Chinese, sabi niya, nagre-reklamo sa korte. Kasi yung lupa niya may problema daw. Dumaan ang lindol, bagyo, ulan, tag-init, tag-ulan. Nandun yung lupa niya. Dumaan daw si attorney na wala yung lupa niya. I do not know. Huwag naman ganyan. Okay. So since this pandemic has happened, tayo ho ay hindi na masyadong makalabas. Even our practice as lawyers is affected. In fact, in 2020, December 9, ang Supreme Court nag-issue po ng interim rules on remote notarization. Kasi hindi nga makalabas yung mga tao eh. But life must go on. Diba? And commercial life particularly must proceed. So paano yan kung hindi nakakalabas yung mga tao? The Supreme Court instituted the so-called interim rules on remote notarization. So 15 pages po yan, pwede naman ninyong ma-download dyan sa Google. Kaya nga pagka lahat ng bagay nakikita sa Google. Kaya yung nanliligaw, sabi niya, Google ka ba? Sabi ng babae, bakit? Kasi natagpuan ko sa iyo lahat na hinahanap ko. Sabi ng babae, Yahoo. Ayan. So, dahil hindi tayo makapag-hearing face-to-face, Sanay na sanay tayo sa face-to-face eh. The Supreme Court, on December 9, July 2020 pala yung remote notarization. On December 9, 2020, issued Administrative Matter number 20-12-01, also known as the Guidelines in the Conduct of Video Conferencing. I know majority, if not all of us here, have already experienced how is it on an online hearing. Di ba? Yan. Katulad ng ginagawa natin ngayon. Buti na, pinayagan tayo ng Supreme Court na mag-synchronous MCLE. Why? Kasi compliance na naman natin sa April 2022 eh. Pero parang mas naisip ko, mas maganda sana in-extend na lang yung compliance by 1 year. Joke lang ho, just thinking out loud. Recorded ho ito, baka mako tayo. Pero okay na rin ito, pinayagan tayo na hindi na umalis ng bahay. Kasi dati-rate, mas nag-i-enjoy ako ng face-to-face MCLE. Kasi by this time, dapat nasa Cebu ako eh. Pero hindi ako makakarakit ng gusto. Kasi kaninang umaga lang galing ako ng Pangasinan. May MCLE rin yung IBP Central Luzon. Eh kung face-to-face ito, I cannot directly go to your place in Cebu right now, no? Ayan. So okay na rin yan. Kumikitang kabuhayan. Joke lang. Every weekend halos may MCLE tayo. But true enough, natutuwa naman tayo at nakakatulong tayo na makapag-comply ng mga kasamahan natin sa profesyon. Okay. So ito po yung guidelines in the conduct of video conferencing, also known as online hearing. So, tingnan natin yung rules and then mamaya we'll try to compare online hearing with face-to-face hearing. Ano ba ang mas gusto natin? Okay. So preliminary provisions muna tayo. The conduct of video conferencing shall be considered as an alternative mode to in-court proceedings, which shall remain to be the primary mode in hearing cases. So despite the introduction of these rules on video conferencing, the court did not set aside or abolish face-to-face hearing. Kasi yun ang buhay natin eh. Di ba? At saka dito, baka hindi tayo mabayaran ng matinong appearance eh. Kasi hindi naman natin nakikita yung kliyente. Di ba? Unlike yung magkasama kayo sa korte, nape-pressure yung kliyente magbayad. Pero dito eh, pangangakuan ka lang, hihingin lang yung GCash number mo, di naman magdideposito. Ang bihira. Okay. So, the presiding judge or justice, kasi hanggang sa Court of Appeals sa Sandigan Bayan, mamaya titingnan natin yung coverage nito, no? The presiding judge or justice shall at all times supervise and control the proceedings. Totoo naman, trabaho ni judge ito eh. And take note, sino ba si judge? Judge is a person who has the power to make decisions on cases brought before the court of law. A public official authorized to decide questions brought before a court. At yan ang sabi ni Merriam-Webster Dictionary, a person who makes a decision or judgment. At alam naman natin na pagka naka 5 years ka na sa practice of law, you can be qualified as MTC judge. 10 years on practice, pwede ka nang mag-RTC judge. Diba? 15 years in practice, pwede ka na mag-justice ng Supreme Court. Pero may mga iba pa hong qualification. Like integrity, probity, competence, independence. At pag hindi daw nagpa-file ng SALN, we have learned from the case of Sereno or Republic versus Sereno that the non-filing of SALN affects the integrity of a person applying for a judicial position. That's the reason why Justice Sereno was the subject of a quo warranto proceeding. By what reason are you occupying that office? Hindi daw pala siya nag-file ng SALN. Ano ba yung SALN? Sekreto ang laman nito? Or sidelines at lagay namin? Hindi pala. Sa akin lahat nakapangalan. Hindi naman. So pag hindi daw nag-file ng SALN yung isang tao, apektado yung kanyang integrity. So requirement to yan. Pero sabi ng estudyante ko, sir, para maging judge yata, kailangan ng isang advanced educational degree. Sabi ko, anong degree naman yan? Hindi pa ba sapat ang Juris Doctor dyan o JT? Hindi sir, kailangan pa ng MBA. Kung saan MBA? Sabi niya, sir, Master in Business Administration? Hindi. Ano yan, sir? May backer ako. Ah, okay. Hindi ko alam yan. Hindi naman siguro laging totoo yan. Ang sabi naman doon sa Luke chapter 6 verse 37, judge not, and you shall not be judged. For that reason, ayoko maging judge. Pero, magaling pala pag naging judge. Ang sabi ho ng Korte Suprema, the judicial office demands competence and diligence. The administration of justice is a sacred task. At ito ang gustong-gusto kong desisyon. And upon assumption to office, a judge ceases to be an ordinary mortal. OMG. So, ibig sabihin, immortal na si judge. Dapat hindi na siya nagkakamali. Ha? Yan ang sabi dyan eh. Hindi ako nagsabi niyan. Ha? 1993 decision of the Supreme Court. Okay. So to continue, letter C, the conduct of video conferencing shall closely resemble in court hearings. So kung ano yung nangyayari sa korte, yun din po dapat ang mangyari despite the fact that it is an online hearing. With remote locations viewed as extensions of the courtroom. That is why, kahit po yung ating manner of dressing, formal pa rin. Kasi it is still court proceeding. Di ba? So, kaya lang yung iba, siyempre, nakaupo ka lang naman, di naman nakikita yung pambabae, naka-short na lang. O kaya yung iba naman, nakapantalon, naka-Amerikana, pero naka-tsinelas. Hindi naman tinitingnan siguro yung paa. Dahil yung mukha lang naman natin nakikita eh. So the dignity and solemnity required in an on-court hearing, as well as the rules and practices on proper court decorum, shall be strictly observed. So kaya pag in-announce na darating na si Judge, the honorable name din ito, presiding, well, natayo pa rin tayo. Diba? At i-recite pa rin natin yung ecumenical prayer for the court. But for those who do not believe in God, that is a good case, no? Nadalhin sa Korte Suprema. Because sa Amerika may mga desisyon dyan na hindi kayo dapat nagpe-pray sa mga government offices. Because of the separation of church and state guaranteed under our Constitution. Di ba? So po pwede nyo dalhin sa Korte Suprema yan. But anyway, that is our practice. So nakatayo pa rin tayo, and then after that, you can be seated just like in a court proceeding. And take note that perjury and contempt laws shall continue to apply. So ang nabago lang naman kasi yung venue eh. But the proceedings are the same. We are still following the same rules of court. But I heard from my professor before that there are two rules that you have to remember. If you want to pass the bar, you have to master the rules of court. That if you want to be good in practice later on, you have to master the rules in court. And they are different things. Okay? Sabi ko, sir, ano yung mga rules in court? Okay, kasama birthday ni Judge. Anyway, so dapat alam mo daw yung birthday. Pambihira. Now, letter D. The rights of the accused to be present and defend in person at every stage of the proceeding. So walang nabago eh. To testify as a witness in his or her own behalf. And to confront and cross-examine the witnesses or witness against him or her at trial are deemed observed when such appearance and or testimony are done remotely through video conferencing under these guidelines with his or her consent. In other words, kung yung isang tao na testigo mo, ayaw niya mag-appear as witness during trial in an online proceeding, we cannot compel him. Kasi po pwedeng objection yan sa kanyang part na ayaw niya makita yung mukha niya eh. At isa pa hong paalala dito, just like in a court proceeding, dun sa face-to-face, we are not allowed to screen capture the proceeding without permission from the court. Kaya wag na wag magkakamali na ipopost sa inyong Facebook yung ginawa ninyong online hearing. Why? That might be a ground for contempt. Kahit na po sa mga online classes, I would always remind my students, please do not screen capture our classes. If you do, please do not post it in your social media account without the consent of everyone present here. Why? there is a strict regulation, the data privacy law. Kasi unang-una, sabi natin public trial. Pero, hindi ibig sabihin na publicized trial na i-broadcast nyo kahit saan. Remember the decision of the court in that case of kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas during the trial of ERAP at sa Sandigan Bayan. There was a petition from KBP to allow the different radio stations, members of the KBP, including television stations, to cover live and air live the trial of ERAP in Sandigan Bayan. But the court did not agree. Why? Ang argumento ng KBP is that part ito ng public trial. Kasi nga, para makita ng publiko yung paglilitis. But according to the Supreme Court, public trial is different from publicized trial. Public trial is the fact that it is open to the public, but they have to attend the court proceedings observing proper decorum. But the moment you broadcast live the proceedings in court, that's not public trial, that is publicized trial. And to continue with the decision, the Supreme Court said that television camera, at that time, television camera pa lang, is a cruel medium. Because it can catch even the most unguarded moments of everyone else present in the proceeding. Kung inaantok yung isang abogado, inaantok si judge, kasi during the trial, talaga naman minsan nakakaantok, nakuha na ng camera. Naku, gagawing meme yan ng mga tao sa Facebook. Diba? So that's why, bawal po na screen capture at i-post. Kasi kahit na public proceeding ito, there is expectation of privacy. Kaya nga ito, tinakpan ko yung mga mukha nito. Although nandyan yan, galing yan sa internet eh. But we have to cover that face kasi baka may makakita, magalit sa atin. Remember, meron tayong data privacy law. At yung mga pictures na yan, yung kailang mga pangalan, in fact, di na natakpan yung pangalan, part siya ng personal data that should be protected. Okay. Now, the confidentiality of attorney-client communication shall always be preserved, and the litigants and their counsel participating in video conference shall be provided with private means of communication whenever necessary. Kapag ang ginagamit ito ay Zoom, madali naman yan kasi you can chat with your client at hindi naman nababasa yan ng iba. Or, pwede naman kayong mag-text, pwede naman kayong mag-email or mag-Facebook Messenger and so on. So there are private means of communication. No? At ito nga ang sinasabi dito, habang searching the internet yan, no? Here lies a lawyer for the last time. Grabe naman. At merong isang anonymous writer, ang sabi niya, when a lawyer dies, he has to be buried in a standing position. Bakit? Kasi may tindog. Ba't hindi nakaupo? Kasi raw sabi, he has been lying all his life. Hindi naman siguro lahat. And as I keep on saying, lawyers are the most honest people on earth because we are governed by our oath and by the code of professional responsibility. Although my son would not agree to that. Okay. Now, the rules of court shall continue to be observed. As I was saying earlier, tuloy pa rin ang rules of court, hindi naman nabago. Dinagdagan lang natin ang rules kasi nga, we cannot see each other face to face. So, except with regard to the requirement that witnesses shall give testimony in open court under Section 1 of Rule 132 of the Rules on Evidence, as well as other special rules or issuances of the Supreme Court. Kasi dito, hindi sa open court ng testimony. Na iba yung venue. Kasi hindi siya aalis dun sa kanyang kinaroroonan, or if the person is a detainee, may rules tayo dyan. Pag nakadetain, mamaya i-discuss natin, nandun siya sa detention facility. Okay? So hindi na siya dadalhin sa korte. That is the exception to the rules on evidence. Now, when any party such as the accused, like a PDL or person deprived of liberty, invoke their constitutional right, including the right to confront witnesses in person at any stage of the proceeding, the court shall grant the same and suspend the video conferencing. Okay, so maliwanag ko ito na kahit na nagkaroon na tayo ng video conferencing ng online hearing, if the accused or any person, no, ay po pwedeng mag-object kasi gusto niya ma-confront face to face. Kasi magkaiba, alam nyo, in conducting online classes, it's like online hearing, malaki po ang kaibahan nung face-to-face kaysa online. Ito ang reklamo ng mga kasamahan nating faculty sa law school, biglang naggumagaling yung mga estudyante ngayon. Kayang-kaya nilang sagutin yung mga tanong, lalo na kapag yung batas lang ipaparecite mo, naku, memoryado nila. Why? Naka-open ho yung screen. Napakaraming screen na open eh. Kaya ako sinasabi sa mga estudyante ko, alam nyo, madali naman magbasa pero masyadong halata. Kasi halatahan nyo naman eh. Diba? That's why during recitation, palagi pong case problem ang binibigay ko para basahin mo man yung batas. If you do not understand it, you cannot apply to the problem that I give you. Okay? So, suspended ang video conferencing unless the denial is warranted by compelling state interest or public policy as may be determined by the justice or the judge conducting the hearing. So ngayon, may isang PDL, ayaw niyang video conferencing lamang. So through the lawyer, sabihin niya ito, na may objection nung kami sa video conferencing, then it is now the decision of the judge whether to continue the video conferencing. But under the rules, kahit sa preliminary provision pa lamang tayo, pwede yung isuspend ng korte yung video conferencing upon the request or objection of the PDL or any accused or any witness and conduct a face-to-face trial. But again, it is left to the discretion of the judge. Okay? Now, sino ang mga korte na dapat mag-conduct nito? The guidelines shall govern the conduct of video conferencing before the first and second level courts. So MTC, RTC, and Court of Appeals, Sandigan Bayan, and Court of Tax Appeal. So practically, lahat po ng korte. Hindi ko lang alam kung pwede ito doon sa Victoria Court. Sorry. Nag-close na nga pala yung Victoria Court kasi hindi talaga pwede dyan ng online. Okay? Now, that is the Court of Silent Jurisdiction now. Now, what are the cases covered by the guidelines? The guidelines shall apply to all actions and proceedings, including small claims cases. Okay? So basically, maaaring criminal, civil, pati nga small claims, di ba? In whatever stage thereof. Kasi nung in-issue yung guidelines na ito noong December, may mga naumpisahan na ho tayo mga kaso, may mga pending cases na, so we can now shift from face-to-face trial to online hearing. The court finds that the conduct of video conferencing will be beneficial to the fair, speedy, and efficient administration of justice like in the following instances. So number one, ang lagi natin inisip, nagka-COVID, kaya pwede ito. Pero sabi ng korte, applicable na rin ito in the following instances. One, acts of God, like typhoon, floods. Ang problema ko dito, pagka may bagyo, pati yung internet connection natin affected. Pati yung ating kuryente, wala. So how can we conduct even an online hearing? Di ba? At sa mga pinagtuturoan kong eskwelahan, palagi kaming online. Napansin ko ang mga estudyante kapag wala nang maisagot, nawawala ng connection. Bigla na lang mawawala sa screen. Sabi ko, I will cite you in contempt. Bigla na lang kayo mawawala. Hindi ko alam kung nawala ng internet o nawala na ng isasagot. Isa siguro nawawala na isasagot kaya nawawala sa screen eh. Diba? So, floods, typhoons, earthquakes, or other unforeseen events. And human-induced events. Ano ba itong mga human-induced events? Katulad doon nangyari doon sa Marawi, di ba? Na merong rebellion, etc. So, tuloy pa rin ang hearing kahit ganon. Online naman daw eh. Fire, strikes, lockdown, and those which limit physical access to the court. Totoo naman. Kasi there was a time na even justice yata ng Supreme Court nagkaroon ng COVID eh. Siyempre, hindi naman natin malalaman kung sino yun. Pero may justice ang Korte Suprema mismo na nagkaroon ng COVID. Therefore, baka po pwede mag-online na rin lang. Yan. Now, another instance, periods of public emergencies officially declared by the concerned agency of the government. At ngayon, ang sinusunod natin, yung mga directives ng IATF. Pero yung mga tao na hindi natutuwa sa IATF, iba ho ang meaning nila sa IATF eh. It's all their fault. Tama ba naman yun? Hindi ho. Interagency task force ho yun. Hindi it's all their fault. Ayan. Tapos yung mga nautusan mag-distribute ng relief goods, ano? Sabi ni Presidente, 4,000. Abay, binigay 4,000. Tama ba naman yun? At nag-distribute daw, DSWD. Ako, pasensya ng mga taga-DSWD. May narinig ako meaning ng DSWD. Pero tingin ko hindi tama eh. Department of Selection and Wrongful Distribution. Tama ba naman yun? Mali yun. Okay. And then the inability or difficulty of a litigant or witness or counsel to physically appear in court due to security risks. Nasa safe house, tapos pag ibinyahe ito, tulad ng mga napapanood natin sa pelikula, aambusin, ay di mag-online hearing na lamang tayo. At meron siyang difficulty in going to and from the court. Alam nyo, during face-to-face hearing pa noon, meron na akong isang pro bono case dito sa Quezon City na murder. 4 yung akusado. Na-cancel yung hearing namin eh. Alam dahilan? Hindi sila madala sa korte from the detention facility kasi na-flat ho yung service ng BJMP. Flat. Ano ba ibang sasakyan? Eh may kanya-kanyang naka-assign daw na sasakyan. Pinalas-malas yung mga kliyente namin, ang kliyente ko, hindi nakapunta sa korte kasi na-flatan daw. Adi, kung tayo ay online, mas mabuti. Kasi hindi mo na kailangan mag-travel eh. Di ba? So health concerns, vulnerability of the witness due to age, physical condition, disability, or the fact that he or she is a victim of sexual offense or domestic violence. Sa mga ganitong kaso po, yung complainant minsan takot siyang i-confront yung akusado. Kasi meron siyang unreasonable fear of retaliation dahil siya ay nagreklamo. So mas advantageous dito yung online hearing. Now, when the litigant or witness is a high-risk PDL as determined under this guidelines. So sino ba yung mga high-risk na ito? Baka may flight risk yan o baka nanganganib yung buhay niya. So when the litigant or witness is a PDL committed in a detention facility or ACICL or child in conflict with the law. Meron naman ho tayong presentation of child witness rule, di ba? May ganyan naman tayo eh. Or committed in a center or facility operated or accredited by the DSWD. So yan, nabanggit na natin kung ano talaga yung meaning ng DSWD. Pero tingin ko mali yung meaning na yan. Okay? Then, eto pa. When the presence of a government agency witness or an expert witness is required, but for justifiable ground, he or she cannot attend an in-court hearing. So, halimbawa, in-implead ninyo ang PSA dahil correction of entry in the Certificate of Live Birth. Eh, minsan sabi lang, busy kami, hindi makarating. May mga pagkakataon, nakakancel ang hearing. Dahil itong mga testigo natin na ito, hindi makarating. So, wala na silang excuse ngayon. Kasi, right at the comfort of the place wherever they are, whether sa office nila or sa bahay nila, they can now attend the hearing and testify online. So, mas favorable ito sa kanila kaysa naman sa pupunta pa sila sa korte. And when a litigant or witness is an OFW or Filipino residing abroad or temporarily outside the Philippines. Well, in my experience, nullity of marriage, so kaya lang yung kliyente ko, yung babae na nag-file ng petition ay isang OFW na nasa Norway. Eh syempre, hindi naman ganun kamura ang pamasahe magmula Norway hanggang Pilipinas. Buti kung walking distance yan, pwede niyan lakarin. Eh ang problema, kailangan pa siyang mag-file ng leave at saka kumuha ng plane ticket. So ilang ulit ito na-cancel. Kaya umabot kami ng mga 3 years doon bago natapos yung nullity of marriage. At kailangan pa magsinungaling, mag-testify ng psychologist. Diba? Pero nahalata yata ito ng Korte Suprema. Kaya on May 11, 2021, the Supreme Court issued a ruling. Although wala pa po yung copy, nahanap ko doon sa website ng Supreme Court, wala pa. May 11, 2021, this is the case of Tan Andal versus Andal. Na doon sa advance press release, sabi daw ng Korte Suprema speaking through Justice Leonen na may good news para sa kanya dahil dinismiss na yung impeachment complaint laban sa kanya. with a vote of 37-0 ng Justice Committee. So wala daw kasing basis talaga eh. So kaya, well, puso yung impeachment na yan eh. So wag pa kasiguro si Justice Leon, may co-warranto pa. Ha? Okay. Ang problema sa lahat ng mga na-impeach, ang pinakapaborito ko na-impeach si President Erap. Kasi nung ma-impeach siya, in-interview siya. And sabi niya, well, I've never been impeached in my life. I may be in red, black, or blue, but never impeached. Right? So yan. So sabi ni Justice Leonen, ito po ay departure from the earlier ruling of Republic versus Molina. Yung mga katulad ko na naghahawak ng nullity of marriage dito, alam natin yung Republic versus Court of Appeals and Rory del Molina, no? Na kung saan merong 8 circumstances na ipoprove tayo para mag-grant yung petition for nullity due to psychological incapacity. But number 1, ito ay medical condition which is found to be incurable. Ha? Eh ngayon, ang sabi ng Korte Suprema, psychological incapacity is not a medical condition. It is a legal concept. And it cannot be applied generally to all. It depends on, in every case, it depends on the circumstances surrounding the case. Kasi daw maaaring itong si Pedro ay incapacitated kapag ang partner niya si Maria. Pero pag si Josefina na ang kanyang kapartner, abay capacitated siya. Diba? So kaya case-to-case basis ito. Aba, ay marami matutuwa dito. Siguro napansin ng Korte Suprema, wala na masyadong kumikita sa nullity of marriage. Sobrang higpit ng mga rules, di ba? On pain of disciplinary action, the lawyer has to attest to the fact na inascertain niya yung residence ng kanyang kliyente. May ganun no eh. Kaya maraming abogado natakot. Now, when a litigant or witness is a non-resident foreign national who while in the Philippines was involved in any action pending before any court and would like to appear and or testify remotely from overseas. So may facility na kasi minsan may mga testigo tayo na nasa abroad. Ang difficulty is how to secure their presence. Ikaw pa ba magpapamasahe niyan? Ikaw pa ba ang magbibigay dyan ng accommodation pagka nag-testify siya? So this time, pwede na nating i-dispense yung ganong expenses kasi they could appear in court online. Di ba? Ang problema lang natin dito, yung time difference. Willing ba itong kliyente mo na gumising ng madaling araw kasi sa kabilang bahagi ng daigdig, madaling araw sa kanila, hapon sa atin, o umaga sa atin. So yung time difference. But I think that could be solved easily and easier than requiring the presence, physical presence of our witness who is a foreigner or residing abroad. Diba? Ayan o. Now, when based on the sound judgment of the court, there are compelling reasons that justify the resort to video conferencing. Okay? But tulad ng sinasabi ko, the court did not set aside the conduct of physical trial, yung face-to-face trial. Ito ho ay in addition lamang. Katulad din nung binabanggit ko sa inyo kanina na interim rules on remote notarization. Isa lang ang gusto kong linawin doon. Pwede pa rin kayong magnotaryo kahit hindi kayo nagkita pero napakahigpit po ng mga guidelines. Plus, the notary public still cannot notarize any document executed outside his territorial commission or jurisdiction. Okay? Kasi may lecture akong ganyan sa MCLE, doon sa Philippine Law School. Isa sa mga lawyers nagtanong, pwede na hubang magpanotaryo kung nasa abroad? Kasi ano naman remote naman Ang sagot, hindi pa rin ho. Kasi under the rules on remote notarization, kailangan isubmit ninyo sa korte yung screen capture na may timestamp at merong nakalagay na up yung landmark ng location. Location ng lawyer, ng notary public, at saka yung location ng affiant o yung party to the instrument. So this is a limitation and assurance that the notary public would not notarize a document outside his territorial jurisdiction in the commission. So ganun pa rin, hindi pa rin pwede mag-notaryo. But here, pwede kayong mag-present ng witness kahit na nasa labas ng bansa. No? And such other circumstances or grounds that may hereafter be declared by the Supreme Court, nasa korte na yan. Now, this guideline shall be applicable during the duration of the current pandemic and thereafter, unless revoked or modified by the Supreme Court. So ngayon, let's say, nag-GCQ na or MECQ, ano ba pinakamaluag? Parang pinakagusto ko yung BBQ. Yung iba naman ESQ. Okay. Ang dami ng QQ, yung iba MLQ. O yan. Ngayon, let's say na-lift na itong mga quarantine protocols na ito or guidelines. Ang korte may option pa rin na gamitin ang video conferencing at hindi lang puro physical hearing. Because the rules shall remain valid and effective unless revoked or modified by the Supreme Court. Okay? Now, ang tanong, pwede ba na si judge i-deny niya? O palaging gusto niya physical hearing? Mamaya po, sasagutin natin yan. Nasa rules din yan. Okay? Now, so ito, immediate order for the conduct of video conferencing. So ngayon, the court may motu proprio under the following circumstances. Napakarami order that hearings, ito yung mga binanggit natin kanina, or proceedings be conducted through video conferencing. Kasi, hindi makabiyahe si judge na quarantine or dun sa lugar nila maraming COVID, so hindi siya makalabas, pwede siya mag-conduct ng video conferencing. Or high-risk PDLs under item 1, doon sa coverage, or yung high-value targets. Na baka pagka lumabas ito, ma-ambush ito. So si judge, ang gagawin niya, instead na ibiyahe pa itong akusado or yung testigo, nasaan ka ba ngayon? Mag-video conferencing na lang tayo. So that's an option for the court. So, a party or counsel may by motion request that the proceeding be conducted via video conferencing. Kasi motu proprio pwedeng i-order ni judge. So ang tanong natin kanina, paano kung si judge ang gusto niya lang palagi physical hearing? Ito na ang sabi doon. The counsel may, by motion, request that the proceeding be conducted via video conferencing. Right? Kasi for example, dyan sa inyong lugar, sa Mandawi ka, tapos sa Cebu City yung nakafile yung kaso, hindi ka makatawid kasi for example, may quarantine protocol na hindi kayo pwedeng lumabas, so you can just file a motion. Now, ang problema dito, paano natin ipapile yung motion? Pwede po yung electronic filing. So through email or courier. Para totally hindi kayo lalabas dyan sa kinaroroonan ninyo. So to expedite the resolution of motions to conduct hearings through video conferencing based on the item mentioned, the movant shall file it electronically. Okay? So kung kaya nga ang mga korte ngayon may mga email address At pag nag-file tayo ng pleadings dito sa Metro Manila, nire-require na ilagay pati yung email address ng abogado. And or personally with the court, serving a copy on the adverse litigant by the same means, maaring electronic or maaring personal or through courier, pinapayagan naman yan. Doon sa amendment to the Rules of Court, Rules 1 to 35, pinapayagan yung mga courier na mag-serve na ng mga pleadings, at hindi na puro registered mail. So at least 10 calendar days before the scheduled hearing dates. Kasi nakaschedule naman yung dates natin ng hearing, kinakalendar naman yan, di ba? By agreement of the parties. In fact, may mga korte na nagtatanong kailan ka available. Kasi pag di ka available, papapalit tayo ng hearing date. Kaya there is no reason for delay at no reason for cancellation kasi po, tinatanong naman yung ating availability. Now, what are the contents of the motion? The motion to conduct hearings through video conferencing must contain or include the following. Number 1, the grounds being invoked by the movant. So madali yan. Sabi nyo, may quarantine dito sa amin. Or dito sa lugar namin, wala pang public transport or sira yung lugar. Baga, yung mga binanggit natin kanina, na hindi lamang ito sa virus ang dahilan, kasama rin yung mga natural calamities, so pwede natin i-cite yan. Of course, the one who alleges must be the one to prove his allegations. Kaya yan yung reklamo ni President Erap dati. Sabi niya, ang dami niyong allegations against me. But you did not present even a single alligator. So the documentary and object evidence to support the grounds being invoked. Ayan, kailangan natin ng ebidensya dyan. The proceedings proposed to be conducted through video. Okay? Ayan, may party line. Okay. Okay lang po. So ano bang proceeding ito? Ba arraignment lang ba or gusto mo buong kasi per stage pwede kayo mag-motion eh. Hindi yung buong trial. Per stage. So arraignment, hindi ka makakapunta. Pwede tayo mag-video conferencing. Or during pre-trial. Kaya lang ang problema natin dito yung marking of evidence, no? But later yun, masasagot ko yan sa rules natin. Yung marking of evidence during pre-trial. Okay? Kasi madali, pag nasa korte tayo ima-mark natin. Pero dahil naka-online ka, how do you mark it? And how sure are you that the other party is marking the correct document or exhibit? Di ba? Okay. So the names and witnesses to be presented and the summaries of their testimonies. So ano ba ang ibibigay niyang testimonya sa korte? And then, the expected location of each participant. So kasi po, itong kliyente ko ay mag-a-abroad. Hindi po pwedeng, hindi siya mag-abroad. Ang testimony niya, next month pa. Mag-a-abroad siya this month. So, ibibigay na natin yung location kung saan siya mapupunta. And then the email address of the concerned litigants. Kasama yung counsel, yung witnesses to be presented kasi padadalan sila ng invitation Remember, yung meeting link ko, hindi ito public. Isinesend ito dun sa ating email katulad nung ginawa ninyo dito sa Cebu City, di ba? Sinend sa inyo yung email o yung meeting link. Kasi hindi public yan. Special requirements. Necessary for the specific video conferencing, if any, as such specialized software for the presentation of video. Kasi kung may ebidensya kayo ng video, ano yung software na gagamitin? So, i-arrange nyo sa korte yan. And then, statement that the movant and the intended witness are technically ready to participate in video conferencing. Kasi nag-file ka ng motion for video conferencing. It was granted. Ang problema, at the time of video conferencing, wala kang internet. Ay, patay tayo dyan. Baka ma-contempt tayo. So sinasabi na ito na merong kayong readiness to participate in video conferencing. In other words, you have to guarantee to the court na at the time of the scheduled video conferencing, there would be no problem. That proceedings would go on. Ang ipanalangin na lang natin, yung korte ang may problema ang koneksyon para hindi tayo magka-problema, di ba? Yung mga ganyan But mind you, ang mga judges ngayon may 5,000 pesos allowance sila. Internet allowance, inaprubahan na ito ng Office of the Court Administrator. Lahat ng mga judges all over the country, may 5,000 a month internet allowance. Sana all. Dahil makahingi ng internet allowance sa kliyente natin. Okay. So comment or opposition on the motion. The adverse litigants shall file within 5 calendar days from receipt of the motion na nagre-request yung iyong opponent ng video conferencing. So sabihin mo, kaya gusto namin personal. Bakit? Nandun, ilalagay nyo ng objection ninyo to the motion. Now, ang suggestion ko dyan, bago kayo mag-file ng motion, coordinate with the other lawyer para wala ng opposition. Ganyan yung ginawa ko nito nakaraan May scheduled trial kami. Ayaw ng judge na mag-video conferencing. Gusto niya physical. Ayaw mo. Ayaw ko mag-appear kasi doon sa lugar ng korte niya, napakaraming COVID cases at that time. Ang ginawa ko, nag-file ako ng written motion na in lieu of appearance in court, dahil din-reject yung aming request for video conferencing, may we just be allowed to file our memorandum. Kinausap ko na yung abogado ng kalaban. Hindi na siya nag-object. So we're just allowed to file the memorandum. Okay? Kasi ito naman, pina-revive lang yung custody case. So, revival lang naman ng old case kasi gusto ng tatay baguhin yung terms and condition ng kanilang court-approved agreement on the custody of the child. Sabi ko, mag-hearing pa tayo. Di lagay na lang natin lahat sa ayaw mo ng video conferencing. Di nag-file ako ng written motion. It was granted kasi wala namang opposition yung kalaban. So that's one of the techniques. So, kausapin nyo na kaagad. Total, kung magkakilala naman kayo mga abogado, di kausapin nyo na kaagad yung adverse counsel para wala nang problema. Kasi kung wala namang opposition, the court might grant it. Siguro, mas malamang ga-grant siya kaysa doon sa may opposition pa, di ba? Okay. So, should the court grant the motion, it shall issue an order to be served electronically containing the following matters. Number 1, the date and time of the video conferencing. Kasi may requirement to tayo dito na at least 20 minutes before nung matawag yung kaso ninyo, nandun na kayo sa waiting room. Ha? Proceedings covered, the name of the witnesses and the nature of their testimonies, and then the expected location of each participant. So kailangan nakalagay yan kasi nakasama naman yan doon sa motion natin eh. The software or platform to be used for video conferencing. Ang ginagamit ko ngayon ay ng mga korte madalas ay Teams, Microsoft Teams. At bihira yata ang gumagamit ng Zoom eh. Kasi mas mahal yung Zoom kaysa doon sa Microsoft Teams. Kaya lang, may problema tayo doon sa Microsoft kasi nag-divorce na si Bill Gates at si Melinda Gates. Eh. Nung tinatanong si Melinda bakit niya diniborsyo si Bill Gates, isang sagot lang binigay niya eh, Microsoft. Ay, 2 words pala yun, micro at saka soft. Okay. Hindi ko alam kung ano ibig sabihin niya doon. Okay. So, the email address of the participants as reflected in court records and to be used for the purpose of video conferencing with notice that the said email addresses are deemed valid. Kasi napakadaling gumawa ngayon ng email address eh. Kasi doon ipapadala ng korte yung link pag pinayagan kayo na mag-online hearing. Okay? Kasi ngayon, uso na yung kwan eh. In fact, noon pa, wala pa tayong mga virus na ganito. If I may mention the establishment, yung St. Peter Memorial Chapels, etc., nagkakandak sila ng e-burol. Meaning, kung nakaburol, yung mga kamag-anak nasa abroad, pwedeng ma-view eh. So may ganun silang facility. Hindi ko lang alam kung pwede yung e-living. Bakit pag-usapan yung e-living? You know? So, and then, if there are changes dun sa email address, kasi baka nagbago, no? Eh, kailangan ipadala natin sa korte ito 3 calendar days before the scheduled video conference hearings, no? Such other matters as may be necessary, so nakalagay ho yan dyan, ha? And then, should the court deny the motion? Kasi yung granted eh. Ito, should the court deny the motion, a in-court hearing shall proceed as scheduled. Wala tayong option. Well, kayo ng motion for reconsideration. Ha? Kahit paabutin nyo pa sa korte eh. Kasi kung talaga namang justifiable yung ground ninyo, eh, dalhin nyo kahit sa Court of Appeals, sa Supreme Court. Anyway, Supreme Court ang nag-issue ng rules na ito eh. Ha? The order of the court granting or denying the motion shall not be subject to motion for reconsideration. So, bawal. So, appeal or certiorari. Ano ang pwedeng gawin? Eh di mag-cite kayo ng constitutional grounds. Okay? Kasi bawal daw eh. General rule, reconsideration, appeal, or certiorari, prohibited pleadings. So, constitutional ground. Pwede naman. Alam nyo, abogado naman tayo eh. Alam natin ang mga remedies eh. Di ba? A good lawyer, remember, will never lose his appeal. Ha? Tayong pinaka-ma-appeal ng mga profesional. And what do you do when you lose your appeal? Punta raw kay Vicky Bello. Ay wag. Naipasuspend din ni Vicky Bello yung isang abogadong kasama natin. Ha? Bello versus Guevara. Eh, kasi naman pangit yung pinost niya doon sa Facebook niya. Kaya nagalit si Aling Vicky. Ayan. Okay. So, electronic filing and service of pleadings. So ito, dahil hindi nga tayo pwedeng magpunta sa korte, eh po pwede na tayo mag-file electronically or through courier. Ha? And then, no cancellation of scheduled video conference hearings. Ito lang ang problema natin dito. Ayan. Except on meritorious grounds. Ano bang pinaka-meritorious ground dyan? Wala kaming kuryente. Wala kaming internet connection na wala bigla. Eh, kasi naman itong ating mga internet connection para mga jowa eh. Diba? Minahal mo na ng todo-todo. Iniiwan ka pa rin ng walang dahilan. Bakit? Ang mahal-mahal na ng binayad mo eh. Pagkatapos iiwan ka pa rin. So, orders and actions issued during video conferencing, the court shall issue orders during video conferencing as if done in open court. Eh well, may mga korte ho ngayon na pagka may order siya, hindi na i-mail eh, inaantay na lang nung physical hearing pa ho. Mga naapiran ko dito sa Metro Manila, paantayin ka na ho, ito na, ipiprint na namin yung order ni judge. Ano naman, di ka na nag-aantay. Diba? So pwede rin naman dito yan eh. At that moment, eh, ginagawa yung order, email na sa'yo. Okay? Such orders shall have the same effect for purposes of periods and remedies that may be availed of by litigants. Now, on the same day, the court shall send electronic copies. Ito yung sinasabi ko, no? open court orders to the litigants and their counsel. So kaya importante yung valid email address. Ay ang problema ko dito yung mga PDL. Kasi wala naman silang sariling email address o kung meron man, hindi naman sila allowed na gumamit ng gadget sa loob ng kulungan. Buti na lang kung nandun na sila sa Muntinlupa kasi pwede na doon. Marami na huling mga cellphone doon eh. Pero pagka mga detention prisoners, they're not allowed. So ang remedy ho dito doon sa abogado or doon sa warden. Ha? Yan. Now, yung minutes ng video conferencing, it is sufficient that the minutes of the video conference hearings is signed by the clerk of court which shall form part of the records of the case. Okay? At isa po, hindi natin pwedeng i-record yung proceeding. Ha? At hindi natin pwedeng i-screen capture, hindi rin pwedeng i-record. Well, yung recording naman, kung ang ginagamit natin ay Zoom, kahit yung Teams, kung hindi ikaw ang host, hindi mo pwedeng i-record dyan without permission. Okay? Now, so ito na, pre-hearing preparation. Ha? Okay na tayo doon sa mga preliminaries. Now, ano bang official software na gagamitin? So generally, ang ginagamit to ng mga korte na dito na familiar tayo ay Microsoft Teams. Dito yata nag-subscribe ang Supreme Court. At wala pa ako natin na hearing na Zoom ang ginamit. No? Yan. Then court shall conduct video conferencing by using only secure software or platform authorized and provided by the Supreme Court. Kaya Teams ang ginagamit dahil yun ang authorized ng Supreme Court, which contains or integrates the official email account. Bakit to? Yung Microsoft Teams ay connected dun sa inyong email. May email na pinoprovide dyan. Ha? Then, sufficient time to prepare equipment and facilities for video conferencing. Kaya hindi ho biglaan ito, no? So the participants appearing remotely to test in advance the system to be used. Kasi biglang nasa hearing ka na, saka mawawala. Kaya lang alam nyo, kahit naman i-test natin ito, pag biglang nagloko ang connection, wala tayong magagawa dito eh. Diba? So let us just always pray na okay yung internet connection natin. For this purpose, the court shall ensure that there are no technical issues regarding the conduct of video conferencing at least one day. Well, ito, ang like kong sinasabi dyan, i-test man natin yan, okay tayo one day before, kinabukasan, nagka-brown out, wala pa rin tayo. Kinabukasan, nagloko yung inyong internet provider, wala tayong magagawa dyan. That is a justifiable ground for cancellation. Okay. So, notices, invitations, and links shall be, following shall be observed. The court shall send to all the concerned participants respective email addresses, the invitation or link to the video conferencing. Kailan? 24 hours before the scheduled hearing. Okay? Separate invitations or links shall be sent for morning and afternoon video conference session. Kasi minsan isang meeting ID lang o nagagamit at saka isang password lang. So magkaiba. Now, upon receipt of the invitation or link, participants shall immediately respond to the invite or send acknowledgement email. So both the litigants and the counsel, upon receipt, ay hindi nyo pwedeng isin lang. Kailangan mag-reply kayo na acknowledging receipt of etc. Okay? Sa email din ho. Now, proofs of receipt of the invitation shall be properly recorded by the court. So yung email, yung reply natin sa email ng korte, yun na yung proof na natanggap natin. Mahirap po magsabi na hindi natin natanggap kasi nandun yan sa sent nila eh. Sa email natin, may record kung ano yung sinend mo eh. So pagka nagsinungaling tayo dyan, pwedeng ipaproduce ng korte yan. Na totoo ba na hindi mo talaga natanggap? Remember, court order lang ang katapat niyan. Kung nainis si judge, orderan ka na i-produce yung ebidensya na natanggap mo. Patay tayo dyan. May record din ho yan pagka na-delete. Okay? Now, any participant who has not received an invitation or link at least 24 hours before the scheduled video conferencing or who cannot access it shall immediately inform the court of such fact through email or phone call or other electronic means para magawaan ng paraan. The invitation or link must be treated with strict confidentiality because it should not be shared with anyone. Personal, kaya nga may personal tayong email, doon ipapadala sa email natin. You cannot share it with anyone. And remember, hindi ko nasususpend yung contempt power of the court. despite the fact that it is video conferencing. So pwede pa rin tayo ma-contempt. Nasa rules yan. So in the case of counsel, if they are unable to participate in the scheduled video conferencing and have to be substituted by another, the counsel must inform the court at least 24 hours. Halimbawa, ako, wala akong internet, for example, sa hearing, and I have a friend na lawyer na po pwedeng mag-attend, so I have to inform the court through email. Now, due to lack of internet capability, may I request that this lawyer substitute for me during the scheduled hearing online. Okay? The unauthorized share of the invitation link may be considered contempt of court. Yan no, ang problemang malaki. Diba? So wag nating i-share. Kaya personal email ho ang pinagpapadalhan nito. Now, participants appearing remotely must be at the virtual or waiting lobby. Parang sa Zoom, hindi ho ba po, lalagay muna kayo dun sa waiting room. Tapos, ang mag-a-admit sa inyo ay yung host. Okay? So normally, hindi naman si judge ang nag-host niyan. Yung kanyang mga personnel sa korte. Although may judge na gusto niya siya ang nagmamanipulate nung proceedings. Kasi nga naman ako control niya, di ba? So, before the scheduled conferencing, nandiyan kayo at least 20 minutes earlier. And technical personnel in remote locations where the litigants and witnesses are testifying from a remote location. There must be technical personnel present in these remote locations to assist and address technical issues that may arise during the video conference. So this is particularly true doon sa mga PDL. Meron bang enough technical capability itong ating mga detention facilities? Kung wala, padalan sila ng technical person para ma-assist. Now, in the absence of a technical personnel, the litigants or witnesses testifying remotely shall assure to the court of their capability to address technical issues. So marunong bang mag-manipulate ng Teams meetings itong testigo natin? Kasi it presupposes that the lawyer and the witness are not in the same location. Diba? Unless nakadetain yung kliyente mo, pupunta ka doon sa jail at doon kayo mag-video conference na dalawa, which I think you would not do. Kaya nga tayo nag-video conferencing para walang physical contact. So, you have to assure the court na kaya ninyo na pangatawanan itong online hearing na ito. Now, public access to video conference hearings. As a general rule, bawal ho. Any individual who wishes to attend a video conference, shall send a request to the court concerned at least 3 days before the scheduled hearing through the court's official email address and provide the following information. Pangalan. Ito yung hindi ka naman kasama dun sa kaso, hindi ka naman lawyer niya, hindi naman siya ang testigo, pero gusto niya mag-attend. Probably to observe the proceeding. So pangalan niya, email address, mag-send ka ng email sa korte, contact number, scan copy of a government-issued ID bearing his or her photograph and signature. Kasi para masigurado na ikaw talaga yung nagre-request. And interest in attending the video conference hearing. Ba't gusto mo mag-attend? Gusto ko lang bantayan itong mister ko. Mahirap yan. So ipapaliwanag mo sa korte, why do you want to attend that hearing online? Okay? Then, the court shall send invitation or link to the video conference through email at least 24 hours of the scheduled hearing. The invitation link must be treated with strict confidentiality and shall not be shared by its recipient with any other person. So pinayagan siya mag-attend, wala naman siyang participation doon, mag-observe lang siya, still bound siya ng rule na ito na hindi niya pwedeng i-share yung link kahit kanino. Otherwise, contempt po yan. The unauthorized sharing, ayan na, of its details and information may be considered a contempt of court. So, individuals must be at the virtual or waiting lobby at least 20 minutes before the scheduled video conferencing. Ganun din yung rules. Okay? Naulit lang ito. Now, the court shall have the discretion to refuse access if it finds that the information given is erroneous or fictitious. Alam niyo, napakadaling gumawa ng email address eh. Kahit sa Facebook, di ba? Ang daling gumawa ng Facebook account. So pag nakita ng korte na fictitious yan, it may likewise exclude to the public when the evidence to be adduced is of such nature as to require the exclusion in the interest of morality or decency, or when a child witness will testify. In proceedings, criminal cases like rape, like domestic violence, hindi ba ini-exclude yung public dyan eh. Pagka physical hearing tayo, so mga abogado lang at mga litigants na involved ang naroroon. Yung public will be asked to leave the court. Or in dito sa Malabon, ang ginagawa, pagka ganitong mga kaso ng domestic violence, doon kami nag-trial sa loob ng chamber ni judge para examine yung witness, lalo na kung siya yung biktima ng domestic violence. So ganun din dito, ano? Madali naman ito eh. Kasi ilalagay lang yung mga hindi naman involved dito, ilalagay dun sa meeting room or sa waiting room or sa virtual lobby. And the court may immediately order individuals removal from a video conferencing hearing to protect and preserve the dignity and solemnity of the proceeding. Kaya siguraduhin din lang na pag-a-attend ng online hearing, nakatalik na yung mga aso at napakain na. Kasi pag tumatahol yan, baka magalit si judge. Buti kung isa lang, kung maraming aso, ng tawag, asosasyon daw. Okay? Pag yung mga pusa, mga iring ba? Daghan sa iring. Ang tawag daw dyan ay pangkat. Okay? So maraming pangkat. Okay. So, puntahan na natin yung hearing proper. Okay? The location of justices or judges and the court personnel during video conferencing. So, nasaan ba si judge? Nasaan yung mga justices? Well, court personnel shall attend video conference hearings from the courtroom or chamber at all times. Diba? Kawawa naman, ireklamo ng mga judges eh. Sila ba ay tawag dito, immune sa COVID na ito? Kasi they must be conducting hearings at nandun sila sa kanilang chamber. Paano naman kaya sila may internet allowance. Okay? Ayan. In exceptional circumstances and with prior permission from presiding justice or executive justices of the Court of Appeals, justices may conduct video conferencing from remote location within their territorial jurisdiction. Ay hindi po pwedeng yung jurisdiction ni judge ay sa Cebu, pero nandito pala siya sa pamilya niya sa Manila. Tapos magkakandak siya ng virtual hearing, nasa Manila siya, Cebu yung kanyang jurisdiction, ay bawal po yan. Papagalitan siya. Unless pinayagan siya ng Court of Appeals o ng presiding judge niya. The Sandigan Bayan and Court of Tax Appeals with prior permission from the presiding justices may likewise conduct video conferencing from remote location. Kasi the general rule is kahit na ito ay video conferencing, the judges, the justices must be in their chamber. For trial court judges with prior permission, pagka mga trial court judges sa Office of the Court Administrator, sa OCA sila ng permiso. In all cases, said permission shall be reflected or stated in any order to be issued by the court during the video conferencing. So, hindi ho discretionary kay judge kung papasok o hindi. But nung mag-MECQ uli ang Metro Manila at may plus na, may bubble pa, yung mga judges ay pinayagan na huwag mag-hearing physically. So, on remote location. Kasi may order ang korte. But for areas under the classification GCQ or MGCQ, applicable ito na kahit na sila ay mag-video conference, physically present si judge or justice sa kanyang chamber. Unless merong permiso. Prior permission. Okay? Now, the interpreter other than the court interpreter participating in a video conference may either be co-located with the remote witness in court or in another remote location. Kasi imposible naman ito na yung testigo mo may kasama siyang interpreter dun sa lugar niya. Di ba? So you just have to inform the court na yung interpreter ho ng court. Alam nyo, minsan mahirap mag-interpret pag magkalayo eh. And then when the interpreter participates from a remote location, the technical arrangements including acoustics, dapat walang ibang sound na naririnig. Quality of sound in such remote location shall be tested beforehand to ensure that the interpretation will be properly understood by all participants. Kung nasa korte na nga po, ang interpretation minsan sablay pa. Paano na yung remote location kayo? Tulad nito, kayo na ho ang mag-judge kung sino ang guilty. The wife is dreaming in the middle of the night. And suddenly, shouts, "Up, quick, my husband is back." So apparently, may kasamang iba, no? The man gets up, jumps out of the window, hurts himself, and realizes, I am the husband. So tingin ko, pari delikto itong dalawang ito. Okay, so, during the hearing proper, gagamit to ng earphones or headset. Participants are encouraged to use earphones or headsets during video conferencing. Unless the courtroom or remote location from which they participate have dedicated video conferencing solution with noise cancellation feature in place. Kasi minsan naririnig pati tilaok ng manok, yung mga tahol ng mga iro, ng mga aso, di ba? Dapat to hindi kasali yan kasi nire-record, nakakasama sa recording. Okay? Ako, pagka nagpapa-exam ho, bawal na naka-headset o naka-headphone. Kumalay ko ba kung ano pinapakinggan nila? Tapos, kailangan nakikita ko sila at yung sinusulat nila. Pero alam nyo, sabi ko dyan, kung talagang mandadaya, mandadaya. Wala tayong magagawa dyan. Diba? At kahit naman anong gawin mo, ika nga nila hindi ka naman magiging sapat sa isang tao na ibang hinahanap. Diba? Kailangan ikaw talaga hinahanap. Kaya nga sabi ko, iwasan palagi ninyo yung mga tao na itinuturing ka lang hagdanan. Bakit hagdanan? Napapansin ka lang pag hindi pwede ang elevator. Ayan. At iwasan nyo rin yung ginagawa kayong Ferris wheel. Bakit Ferris wheel? Akala mo pinapasaya ka, yung pala pinapaikot-ikot ka lang. Okay? Ayan. At finally, mayas kayo sa mga tao na parang buwan. Bakit buwan? Sinasamahan ka sa gabi pero iiwan ka rin pagdating ng araw. Okay, so video conferencing, yung mga protocol for speaking. At the beginning of the video conferencing, the court shall conduct a colloquy. Makikipag-usap with the participants appearing remotely. Kakausapin niya muna para okay tayo, no? It shall also inform the participants of the protocol for speaking, which includes order in the participants shall be speaking, procedures for interrupting another participant. Sa Zoom ho, madali yan kasi pwede ka mag-raise ng hand. Kaya lang, minsan hindi nakikita nung host. And then, raising objections during the hearing and conferencing privately with counsel. So, nandito, na-address din yan. When interpretation is to be used, participants shall be instructed to speak at an appropriate pace and to articulate and project their voice. Kasi minsan, depende dun sa audio device, pangit ang sound. So I hope yung aking audio ay maliwanag sa inyo, no? Kasi minsan mahina, minsan parang basag yung boses. So dapat regulated ito. Participants shall also be informed of the procedure that the court shall adopt for alerting the presiding justice or judge of any technical difficulty encountered during the hearing. Paano? Kung na-narrate na nung kanyang testimony yung testigo, pagkatapos nawalan ng kuryente. Hindi ka na talaga makakapag-notify kay judge niyan. Diba? So paano natin ino-notify si judge if ever? So dapat i-discuss din ito sa mga participants. And then, at the start of the video conferencing hearing, the court shall require participants at a remote location to pan their cameras across the room. So kung laptop po ang hawak ninyo, iikot nyo yung laptop para makita yung paligid. Anong purpose? To make sure na nakasarado yung pinto, walang bata na papasok at manggugulo, di ba? And there are no unauthorized means of communication available to them. Kasi baka may nakaprepare ng video, Kasi prinactice na ni attorney yung testimony ng kanyang witness, pinapanood ng testigo yung mga procedure na gagawin niya. Pero alam niyo, mahirap namang hulihin yan eh. Diba? Kung meron talaga siyang kodigo, madaling tingnan yan. Pero that's the requirement. Na ipapan niya, iikot niya para makita yung kabuuan ng room kasi dapat mag-isa dapat siya dun sa room. This to ensure that there will be no coaching or disturbance that may affect the proceeding. Kaya maraming judges, ayaw talaga mag-video conferencing. In the case of a child witness, the court may allow them to testify in the presence of persons enumerated under Section 25 of Administrative Matter 004-07. Ito yung child witness rule. Okay? Kasi kung minor de edad, kailangan meron niyang guardian na mag-a-assist sa kanya during the testimony. Now, indication in case of the records of the conduct of video conferencing and the location of participants. The conduct of video conferencing and the respective locations of the participants shall be indicated in the case of in the case records. So nakalagay, nag-video conference kami, nasaan yung location ng mga participants na ito? Nasaan yung kanilang abogado? Kung siya ay nakadetain, saang detention cell siya or facility. So court orders issued during the video conferencing hearing shall reflect such facts, including any inconvenience or difficulty experienced. So during the testimony of this witness, umagal lang kanyang internet. Naghang siya. Naging choppy siya. Iba ko yung choppy sa Shopee, o kaya Lazada. Okay? And technical issues which might affect the regularity of the proceeding. So kung nag-brown out, yan ang pinakamalaking problema natin. Either power interruption or internet interruption. These are the common problems. Now, during the hearing proper, participants speaking or testifying must always be seen from a frontal angle and heard clearly by all the other participants. So hindi po pwede na yung naka-side view ka lang. So kailangan ito ginagawa natin, nakaharap. Frontal angle daw palagi at maliwanag yung boses. In all cases, video conferencing hearings shall be conducted in such a way that it will not impede the court from exercising its crucial role in determining the credibility of the witnesses and their testimonies, notwithstanding the remote observation of the latter's demeanor. Kasi mahirap pong tingnan yung may mga taong telegenic di ba? Na pagka nasa screen, talagang guwapa ka man. Pero pagka pagka yung actual na, guwapa pa rin. Okay? Conduct and attitude during the taking of their electronic testimony. Now, the proceeding through video conferencing shall be recorded by the court. Only the court can record. Not the witnesses, not the lawyers. It shall form part of the record of the case, appending thereto relevant electronic documents taken up or issued during the hearing. An encrypted master copy shall be retained by the court, while the backup copy shall be stored in a safe location. Saan yung safe location na ito? Siyempre, sa korte pa rin yan. Now, litigants and their counsel may be allowed to view the recording upon application with approval of the court. Kasi tulad nung TSN, di ba? Nabibigyan tayo ng kopya ng TSN Pero ito, you have to file a motion para mabigyan ka or maipakita sa iyo yung recording. The court stenographer or other recorder authorized for the purpose shall nonetheless still transcribe. So hindi pa rin nabawasan ang trabaho ng stenographer. Magta-transcribe pa rin siya in addition doon sa recording. Participants and other persons attending video conferencing hearing are strictly prohibited. Ito yung kanina ko pa sinasabi sa inyo. Any portion of the proceedings through any means. Whether pipicturean nyo lang or may separate gadget kayo. Kasi pagka nag-recordo kayo, hindi naman kayo i-allow ng recording kung hindi kayo pinayagan ng host. Ganon din naman sa Teams. Pero there are other means of recording it. Huwag nyo na ipapaalam sa korte. Dahil pag nalaman, contempt po yan. Any unauthorized recording shall be considered a contempt of court. Must be permanently deleted or surrendered to the court for disposal. Okay? So kaya, what's the moral of the story? Do not record anything. Ayan. Then, signing of the documents during video conferencing. The Office of the Court Administrator shall issue guidelines concerning the digital signing of documents. Kasi ang problema natin dito, how do you sign the orders of the court na natanggap ninyo? So pwede bang electronic signature? Ay dangerous yan. Kasi some other interested parties may use illegally your electronic signature. Kaya sa office, ang ginagawa ko, bago nyo i-attach yung electronic signature ko dyan, ipaalam nyo muna sa akin. Ha? At ako magsasabi kung lalagyan na ng signature o hindi. Kasi delikado, sa mga panahon natin ngayon, magagamit yan. Okay? And then, suspension or discontinuance of conferencing. The court may at any point during the video conferencing suspend the proceeding. Kay judge yan eh. Or exclude any person. Sa tingin niya, hindi nag-o-observe ng decorum. Ha? Should any technical issue tending to taint the regularity or fairness of the proceedings arise. Parang nung one time, midterm exam, sinabi ko na iisa lang ang gadget na gagamitin. At hindi ko pinapamute. So lahat sila naka-open ang microphone. Pero during video conferencing sa hearing, dapat naka-mute lahat yan. Unless you're allowed to unmute because it's now your time to speak. So during the exam, hindi sila naka-mute kasi gusto kong marinig kung ano ang nangyayari. Kaya pati mga tahol ng aso naririnig ko. Ay, yung isa nagpe-feedback. Sabi ko, bakit nagpe-feedback? Ayaw umamin. Kaya nagpe-feedback yan kasi dalawa ang gadget mo. Hindi magpe-feedback yan kung isa lang ang gadget mo eh. Nakikipagtalo. Di tinanggal ko sa meeting. So wala siyang midterm exam. Violation of the rules. Napaka-lenient na nga ng mga rules ko. Isang rule lang na isang gadget lang ang gagamitin per person. Hindi nyo pa magawa. Di in-exclude ko sa meeting. Pag na-exclude sa meeting, hindi na ho yan makakabalik. Okay? Yan ang problema niya. Now, should the said technical issue remain unresolved despite the effort to fix it? Katulad doon nung isang video conferencing, naka-unmute naman pero talagang walang marinig eh. So the judge may just cancel that hearing. Kasi hindi niya marinig yung testimonya nung witness. So it's useless to continue with the proceeding. So pwede niya hong i-discontinue yan. The same action shall be taken when matters arise warranting the physical appearance of a litigant or witness in the courtroom. Kung sa tingin ni judge, hindi po pwede yung virtual testimony lamang, the judge may suspend the video conference hearing and require that witness or those witnesses to appear personally and physically in court. So in all cases, the reasons for the suspension or discontinuance shall be reflected in an order to be issued by the court. Katulad ho nung bawat physical hearing natin, nakakatanggap tayo ng court order, di ba? Na ito yung nangyari at yung next setting. So ganun din, kung may video conference hearing, after the video conference hearing, may order ang korte. So naka-reflect din doon kung ano nangyari at kung ano yung susunod na gagawin natin in the next or succeeding proceedings. Okay? Now, eto na. So presentation of evidence ho tayo. Ano yung mga documentary evidence and judicial affidavit? So subject to the provisions of the rules on evidence and of the rules on civil procedure, for purposes of these guidelines, documentary evidence and judicial affidavits, including attachments thereto, unless already part of the records of the case, shall be filed and served at least 3 days prior to the scheduled video conferencing. Kasi kung wala pang kopya ang korte at ipipresent natin during video conferencing, bigyan na natin ng kopya ang korte and the adverse party at least 3 days before the schedule. Kasi noon, pwede naman yan at that time na ipipresent mo siya, pwedeng doon na mismo sa korte at copy furnish the adverse party. Ngayon, hindi natin magagawa kasi how do you send it electronically? Although pwede naman picturean at isend, importante pa rin no, yung physical or printed copy. So you have to provide the court and the other party a copy of that document or judicial affidavit as the case may be 3 days before the scheduled hearing. Okay? Colored and legible electronic copies of these documents shall also be made available through email or the shared document repository of the court to ensure that all concerned participants receive the exact copies uneditable by any of them. So kung Word document yun, madaling ma-edit. That's why, i-convert ninyo into PDF or Adobe file. Kasi yun o, hindi ho na-i-edit yun. Or JPEG o yung pipicturean nyo. So ganun ang ginagawa ko sa mga estudyante ko during exam, pipicturean nila yung kanilang handwritten answer at yun ang isi-send nila. Kasi mahirap po kung doon sila magsasagot mismo sa computer nila, no? Ayoko ng ganun, nasasagutan sa computer. Although yung best bar ever, mukhang i-integrate ang pag-computer, no? Yung examination na bar exam sa November yata, i-integrate na yung use of technology. But just the same, mas maganda pa rin yung handwritten. Ha? Let us continue. Okay. So puntahan na natin yung presentation of evidence, no? So documentary and evidence and judicial affidavit should the examination or viewing of the documentary evidence be rendered impossible. Kasi nga naman, paano natin ito present online? Insufficient or difficult by the limitations of the platform or some other compelling reasons, the judge may order an in-court hearings and instead present the witness or the completing the testimony of the witness in the court itself. So physical hearing na lang. Kasi wala tayong choice dahil hindi kakayanin doon sa online presentation. Now, for object evidence may be presented during video conferencing if the same can be exhibited to, examined, or viewed by all the participants. Halimbawa, yung deadly weapon that was used in attacking the victim. Di pwede naman sigurong ipresenta yan. Kaya lang, ang laging worry natin dito, papaano kung yan ba talaga yon? So there's always the danger na baka mapalitan, di ba? That may be detrimental to the interest of the prosecution. So, or physically showing it to the witness testifying thereto at his or her location. Kung PDL you have to assume na PDL halimbawa, dadali mo dun yung deadly weapon at papa-identify mo sa kanya. How sure are we naman na magsasabi ito ng totoo? Diba? Now, should the marking of exhibits or the examination of the object evidence be rendered impossible, insufficient, or difficult by the limitation of the platform or some other reasons, so mag-order ng court hearing. Physical. And then, the use of interpretation during video conferencing. When the interpretation is required during video conferencing, the court shall require consecutive interpretation in the taking of testimonial evidence. So the interpreter shall always have a clear frontal view of all the participants. So yung ginagawa natin, nakaganyan, ang problema lang natin dito kung sa Zoom, kapag ka mag-share ka ng screen, hindi mo na makita lahat ng participants. Kasi 5 lang yung available kapag Zoom. Sa Teams, parang ganun din Now, the interpreter shall have a clear frontal view of all the participants who will be speaking to, allow him or her to observe lip movements. Magaling sa lip reading itong interpreter. And under non-verbal communication, avoid ambiguity, and provide more accurate interpretation. Di dapat malinaw yung video. Kaya pagka nagkaroon ng mga aberya dito or some difficulties, it is always the option of the judge to discontinue with the video conferencing. So yan ang default procedure dyan. Discontinue. Parang in case of doubt, don't. Ha? Kaya minsan tama yung sinasabi ng ating mga pulis eh. Sumuko ka na para hindi ka na masaktan. Kasi kung hindi ka susuko, patuloy ka masasaktan. Ayan. Okay? At lalo na ho kapag pag-ibig ang problema, sabi nila walang pag-ibig, eh magtrabaho kayo. Magkakaroon kayo ng pag-ibig every month. Deduction nga lang. At pag-ibig ang problema, huwag niyong habulin. Baka kayo ay masaktan. Tandaan ninyo, hindi covered ng PhilHealth ang pag-ibig. Okay? Magkaiba ho yan. At ang pag-ibig daw, lagi kong sinasabi, yung iba sa inyo, alam na ito eh, para ho yung bayad sa jeep. Minsan hindi ka sinusuklian. O kaya minsan, para ho yung gulong. Minsan nasa ibabaw. Minsan nasa ilalim. Minsan flat. Pero minsan, reserva ka lang. Kasi mga estudyante ko, pag di nyo alam ang tamang sagot at ayaw nyo man magkamali sa exam, ang isusulat sa papel ay magmahal. Kasi kahit kailan, hindi naging mali ang magmahal. Mapapamahal ka nga lang next sem. Ha? Eh, yung mga mahilig uminom, ang sulat na lang Red Horse. Bakit? Ito ang tama. Okay. So private communication between litigants and counsel. Pwede ba silang mag-communicate? When litigants and their counsel are not present in the same location. Kasi kaya nga tayo nag-video conferencing kasi hindi sila po pwedeng physically mag-appear. They shall be permitted to confer privately without the other participants overhearing them. Eh napakadali ho ito kasi pareho naman kayo may cellphone or ang problema kung PDL, walang cellphone yan. So makikigamit ka doon sa jail guard na ipapabasa doon sa sa kliyente mo na PDL, di ba? Separate meeting rooms, pwede naman ho yan. Sa Zoom, may mga breakaway session. Hindi ako masyadong sanay sa Teams eh. Sa Zoom ho kasi lagi namin ginagamit. Now, and other suitable electronic means. Now, additional procedure, ito po in case of criminal cases. Kasi we all know na talagang liberty is at stake. At kaya po ito na institute itong rules na ito kasi marami mga PDL na nakakulong pagkatapos ang tagal-tagal na nila doon, almost 1 year ho ito eh. Nagsimula tayo April, kailan lang na-institute itong rule na ito? December. So almost 1 year, walang trial. Kawawa naman yung mga taong ito na nakakulong na as a matter of fact po pwede namang mapalaya. Kailangan lang talagang magkaroon ng hearing. Okay. So, motion to conduct video conferencing by the warden. So even the warden is allowed in case involving high-risk PDLs. Alleged to be high-value target, and those with serious health conditions. The motion to conduct video conferencing may be filed by the jail warden or detention facility where the concerned PDLs are being detained or held. Kasi sila ang nakakaalam ng actual condition ng mga PDL eh. When the video conferencing is intended to allow an accused PDL to testify or attend the proceedings, the motion may be granted ex parte by the court. See? So po pwede na kahit na wala na yung abogadong i-file, yung jail warden mismo siya ang pwede mag-initiate. Now, notices and service of pleadings, motions, and other court papers to PDL may be sent to the official email address provided by the person in charge. Kasi practically, itong mga nakadetain, wala naman silang gadget sa loob ng kulungan, di ba? So paano sila maabot? Okay. So ang gagawin dyan, magbibigay sa korte ng email address yung jail warden. Ano yung kanyang email address na pwedeng ipadala doon? So with respect to CICL, ito yung mga children in conflict with the law, committed in a center or facility. Kasi sa ilalim mo ng batas, every local government unit must have a bahay pag-asa na yung mga CICL waiting the decision for their cases or may pending cases, ay doon muna sila sa bahay pag-asa, di ba? So notices may be sent to the official email address of the person in charge of the center or facility where they are committed. So in this case, yung bahay pag-asa. Now, PDLs and CICL, pagka nasa remote location sila, the following rules must be observed. PDLs participating remotely shall appear from an enclosed room in the detention center or jail facility where they are being detained or held. Hindi ho po pwede na doon mismo sa selda nila. Okay? Dapat may isang facility na i-designate. Ang problema ho dito, sa dami ng mga PDL, paano pag nagkasabay-sabay yung kanilang scheduled video conferencing? Problema ngayon itong si Warden kung saan niya ilalagay itong mga ito. O gagawa na lang siya ng cubicle. Hindi po pwede kasi magkakarinigan yan eh. Di ba? Unless bibigyan ng magandang headset. Naku, yun nga lang paluagin yung jail, hindi magawa yung magandang headset pa. Diba? Jail facilities and detention centers shall ensure that they have sufficient rooms. Ala, doon sa opisina ni Warden, baka naman pwede. Kaya paano nga kung sabay-sabay? Hindi po pwede doon sa jail mismo eh. Equipment and facilities. Another problem, yung bang detention facility may magandang internet connection. Electricity, okay, kasi bira naman yung brownout at lahat naman ng detention facilities may electricity. But the problem is yung internet connection. Now, yung bandwidth ba niyan kayang i-accommodate lahat ng magbe-video conferencing? Kasi paano kung sabay-sabay, di ba? Even when such proceedings need to be conducted simultaneously by other courts. Yan sinasabi ko. Paano kung sabay-sabay? Yan ang malaking problema natin. Now, in the case of CICL committed in a center or facility operated by DSWD or accredited by it, they shall testify from an enclosed room. So pareho din nun ang rule. At pareho din ang problema. Okay? Kasi yung ating internet connection, kung di pa magsabi ang presidente na talagang ipapasarado na nila, hindi naman aayusin eh. Pero alam ko yung mga miyembro dito ng abogadong Pinoy, no? Kung meron kayong problema, ay alam nyo na kung sino ipipm ninyo. Si Atty. Joan de Venecia. Dahil siya ang Vice President ng PLDT. Personally, na gumanda ang internet connection namin dito because of her help. Kaya pasalamat po tayo sa kanya. Kung PLDT kayo, kung hindi PLDT, hindi ko naman sinabi lumipat tayo ng PLDT. Now, yung location of counsel naman. At the option of the PDLs and CICL, which choice shall be made on record at the start of the video conference. So their counsel may be physically present with them at the jail facility or detention center. So may mga abogado na gusto nila kasama nila yung kliyente nila, video conferencing ito. So ikaw ang pupunta doon sa jail kasi hindi naman siya aalis doon. Or PDLs and CICL, the counsel shall be provided with facilities or means to privately communicate with each other throughout the video conferencing. It presupposes na hindi magkasama yung kliyente at saka yung abogado. Okay? Now, in case of arraignment, may arraignment, dapat nandun siya physically present, but since it cannot be done, it is sufficient that the clerk of court issues a certification that the accused was arraigned personally, entered a plea of guilty or not guilty, or he refused to enter a plea as the case may be. Kasi may mga akusado tulad ni President Erap sa Sandigan Bayan, hindi siya nag-enter ng plea of guilty. Hindi rin siya nag-enter ng plea of not guilty, so tahimik lang siya. Therefore, the court entered on his behalf a plea of not guilty. Okay? Now, if decisions or judgments are promulgated, ito na ho, promulgation of judgment na, are promulgated through video conferencing. Kasi pwede naman yan. With the accused as participants, said the accused shall enjoy all the remedies available to them and within the period provided under the rules of court as if they were physically present in court during promulgation. So this is an exception na dapat present in court yung akusado at yung kanyang counsel during promulgation. Okay? But all the remedies are still available. No? So, in addition, ito po ay para naman dun sa mga OFW or those Filipinos who are temporarily abroad o para doon sa mga non-resident foreign national who would be participating in online conferencing. So ito ho, hindi basta-basta magkakaroon ng video conferencing wherever they are at kung saan nila gusto. Wow, nandun siya sa Las Vegas, gusto niya doon siya sa may casino area mag-video conference, bawal po yun. Ang video conferencing ho ay kailangan sa Philippine Embassy or consular offices ng Pilipinas. Eh di ganun din. Kasi hindi na sila bumiyahe papuntang Pilipinas. Di ba? So, litigants and witnesses who are overseas, Filipino workers, Filipinos residing abroad, etc. No? So, may magpa-participate sila sa video conferencing, may do so upon proper motion with the court where the case is pending. But such video conferencing may be conducted only from an embassy or consular office. Not anywhere, not in their residence. So makikiusap pa sila doon sa consular office na dito ho kami magkakandak ng video conferencing kasi mag-a-attend ako ng online hearing. Okay? Ngayon, Philippine embassies and consulates shall conduct video conferencing in accordance with the technical and operational standards laid out in these guidelines. So sabi ni Ambassador, teka, hindi ko alam, paano ba ang gagawin natin dyan? Trabaho ninyo, nabigyan sila ng kopya. Okay? Now, litigants and witnesses who are OFWs, etc., may motion sa consulate. Okay? And then the motion shall be filed by the litigants interested to avail, hindi to bail, nagkulang lang yan. Kasi medyo minadali. The same requirements for the contents of the motion of this guideline shall apply, etc. So yun nung ganun din, walang pagbabago. Basta ang kaibahan lang doon sila sa Philippine Embassy or consular offices mag-conduct ng video conferencing. Not just anywhere. Okay? Now, should the court grant the motion for video conferencing, it shall also furnish the concerned Philippine Embassy or consulate. Siyempre, gagamitin ninyo yung facility ng consular office, so dapat alam nila na may proceedings. No? So may kopya sila ng court order. Kaya magmo-motion yung abogado. Now, the movement shall defray all the expenses and costs that may be necessary for the conduct of video conferencing from Embassy or Consulate of the Philippines. Kasi makikigamit kayo ng facility nila eh. And, ito kailangan daw may minimum requirement for technology. The technology, facilities, and equipment to be used must be of such quality as to allow the conduct of video conferencing as prescribed by the guidelines. So, ang number one problem mo natin dito, yung internet connection. This must allow the participants to clearly observe the demeanor, non-verbal communication, facial expression of the other participants, and see and hear what is taking place in the courtroom and remote location. Then, konti na lang po ito. Okay, mag-alala. Kayang-kaya na natin yan. So, for this purpose, courtroom shall be equipped with laptops. Ilan na bang courtrooms ang may laptop? Okay lang naman yan kapag medyo talagang di nakayanan, nasa batas naman ito, Article 278 ng Labor Code. Pwede kayo mag-picketing. Ayan. Picketing. Okay. So jail facilities, dapat daw meron din silang mga facilities. Meron ba kaya? Then telephone lines and internet connectivity, that is a major problem. Diba? Yung internet connectivity. Alam nyo, isa na yata tayo sa pinakamabagalang internet connection sa Asia. Pero isa tayo sa pinakamahal na binabayaran sa internet. Okay. Now, yung setup ng room, the courts, agencies, or local government units managing the penal institution. So address ito dun sa Bureau of Correction at saka sa DOJ na anong kailangan, yung layout, lighting, acoustics. Bago lang ito, so kailangan mag-a-adjust pa dito, no? Then technical personnel, dapat may dedicated technical personnel in the court para siya ang troubleshooter, siya ang magre-repair. At kailangan dyan ng technical training. Paano kung itong sina judges at justices at di marunong mag-manipulate ng mga gagamiting platform? Bigyan din daw sila ng training. Then, eto na, gross misconduct in video conferencing. So any intentional disruption of digital communications intended to deny participation by any coaching of any witness presented for examination knowingly presenting falsified digital images. Ayan na, magkakaproblema tayo dyan. All Supreme Court issuances inconsistent with the guidelines are hereby modified and or repealed accordingly. At ito na ho, konting-konti na lang. the court shall continue to conduct video conferencing using available facilities. Pero as I was saying, hindi ho ito magsusupplant o mag-overturn doon sa physical hearing. Video conferencing is just an alternative mode of conducting hearings under the circumstances provided by these rules. Okay? So, and remember always, sabi ni God, all things are only transitory. So lahat naman ho, lumilipas. Ano? Lilipas din yan. Kaya huwag niyong masyadong pagtuunan ng pansin. Kung nakalipas na, pabayaan na. Like ko sinasabi, sa algebra man o sa tunay na buhay, malaking problema ang X. Ha? Kaya sabi ng lalaki, no? Magaling ka ba sa algebra? Sabi, bakit? I'll ask you sana to replace my X without asking why. Sabi naman sa lalaki, I don't care about your X. I'll never ask why. For as long as I have you. Ayan. So, ipapublish yung guidelines na ito at nag-take effect ho. Ang guidelines, kalendaryo lang ho ito. January 16, 2021. So, ang date kasi nito, December 9. After publication, nag-take effect ho siya, January 16. So, doon pa lang magsisimula itong rules na ito. Now, what are the advantages of online hearing? Well, there's no need to travel. Ako, isa sa napaka-problema ko noon yung traffic dito sa Metro Manila. This saves time on travel expenses. Then, if a judge needs to reschedule or postpone the hearing, nasa bahay ka lang. Hindi katulad doon, di ba? May mga instances naandun na ako, nakadrive na ako, etc. 8:30 yung hearing, habang nasa traffic ka, may text. Attorney, hindi po tuloy ang hearing. Sabi ko, bakit? For lack of material judge. Okay. Ayan. There's no need to reserve a room in the courtroom. Ay, dali naman yan kasi may courtroom naman talaga. There's also less need to worry about security. Parking, that's number one problem sa mga courtrooms dito sa Metro Manila. Walang parking area. And other inconveniences. So yung less expenses, less stress. Kasi stressful na nga yung kondisyon natin. Now, what are the disadvantages? Kasi kung may advantages, may disadvantages. One, yung control issues. Diba? Malay mo, nag-hearing kayo. Katulad ni Kapitan. Naalala niyo pa si Kapitan? Sa Zoom meeting, iba ang ginagawa. Hindi man lang pinatay yung camera. Ayan. So isa yan sa mga disadvantages. But judges can see what's going on behind the scenes of the camera. Maaring kasama mo yung testigo mo, kino-coach mo, hindi naman mahalata ni judge yan. Di ba? Well, most court sessions are open to the public. Online hearings cannot be so. Kasi nga, may link na ibibigay. And then when you are in an online hearing at home, a lot of disturbances may occur. Nandiyan na yung online shopping. Diba? Biglang magdo-doorbell. Yung mga aso, nagkakahula na. Minsan may maingay na kapitbahay. In a physical court, the judge can order the witnesses to stay outside the courtroom until it's time to testify. But the judge can also do that during online hearing. It's harder to enforce the rules when you are conducting hearing virtually. Ay, totoo naman ho yan. Diba? Although may contempt dyan, hindi palagi And then many personal records including psychological evaluation, medical reports, ay may greater risk ho na ito ay ma-compromise at baka ma-hack ng mga hackers. Diba? At bago tayo tuloy magtapos, ito ho, bagong-bago, 2021 edition, Constitutional Law 1. Available ho yan sa Rex Bookstore. Pwede nyong tingnan yan. And then, wala pa yan daw sa market. Mga August pa yata available. Okay. Ito buong labor law. Ano po? Pwede nyong tingnan yan. Yan ang latest on the matter. Siyempre, may Consti 1, edi may Consti 2. Yan no, ay ginagamit ng mga estudyante ko sa San Sebastian, sa Arellano School of Law, sa PLM School of Law, at dati sa De La Salle, pero never kong piner sa mga estudyante ko to buy. I never told them to buy my books. Kasi tinuturo ko din yung mga subjects na yan. So pag ganitong subject ang handle natin, sabi ko sa kanila, you can use any book you want. But I have books, ako yung author, you can use them. Not mandatory. But friendly reminder, lahat ng tanong ko sa recitation at sa exam, sa mga librong yan manggagaling. So may option kayo. Okay? At ito ho, ay nandyan na yung away ng Pilipinas at saka ng China. Public International, although we are now revising it. So by July or August, lalabas na yung revised edition 2021. At dito sa 2017 edition pa man, kasama na ho dyan yung decision ng arbitral panel na panalo ho tayo in all aspects. What we need is just to enforce. Okay? Gusto nyo ng tungkol sa kasaysayan, meron din ho tayo niyan. Ako naman ho ay lisensyadong guro, ayun naman, para sa mga rights and obligations of public and private school teachers. Siyempre, para maging teacher, kailangan pumasa sa exam. Ayan ho, may reviewer tayo. Ha? At pagka gusto sa gobyerno at hindi lamang job order or contract of service, isa yan sa mga diniscuss namin doon sa forum ng IBP last Thursday, ay napakarami yung contractual sa gobyerno eh. Ayaw nila ng endo sa private, pero sa government, napakarami yung contract of service at mga job order. Eh kailangan ng eligibility. So mag-review para civil service exam kung hindi lawyer. Gusto ng filosofiya, aba meron tayo niya sa Rex. You want to travel but you cannot go anywhere dahil bawal nga eh. Ay basahin nyo na lang ito. You can travel around the world without leaving the comforts of your home. Ha? At ito naman no, ay sa Asian civilization. At ito yung kasaysayan ng history of education in the Philippines. At ito naman no, si Rizal. No? At syempre, nagbago sila ng curriculum, may senior high school. Abay, kailangan kong kumita dyan. Ay hindi, kailangan natin makatulong dyan. Ha? Ito naman yung libro para senior high school. At yung aking roommate naman, yan naman ang kanyang libro. And tandaan mo palagi, I always tell this to my students and audience, lawyers love to talk, but we rarely listen. So if you want to be a lawyer or a teacher, use your mouth to earn a living. If you want to use other people's mouth to earn a living, don't be a lawyer, don't be a teacher, be a dentist instead. But more important than talking is listening. Why? Nakita ninyo ang kasing-kasing? Heart. Remove letter T, you have the word here. Remove letter H, you have the word ear. So the middle of the word heart is the word ear. And if you try to cut both your ears, but please do not do this at home, you put them together, you'll form a heart-shaped object. So what does it imply? Our ears are the gateways to our heart. You'll never know how to love unless you know how to listen. And listening is the starting point of loving. Kung nabitin mo kayo doon sa lecture, pwede kayong pumunta dito sa YouTube channel na ito and listen to other lectures. So maraming salamat po. Daghan salamat sa inyong pagpaminaw. Maayong hapon sa inyong tanan.
Daghang salamat. Thank you very much and maraming salamat to Dean Cecilio Duka for that very interesting, insightful, and inspiring lecture. Let's all give him a virtual round of applause. Dean Duka, daghang salamat. You will be back later at 5 to 6 p.m.
Opo.
So those who still want to listen to his jokes, and his jokes are so funny, we love Dean Duka and his jokes. He will be back at 5 to 6 p.m. We have no time for questions, but if you have some with regard to this topic, you can put it in the chat box and we will send it to Dean Duka. Attorney Sering says, hello, Dean Duka, stay safe.
Ay, ma'am. Nandito pala si Ma'am Sering.
Dami kang fans dito, sir. So please
Salamat
allow
po.
me to read this certificate of appreciation. If you have questions, again, you just type it in the chat box. All right, so the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, Cebu City Chapter, and the University of San Jose Recoleto School of Law presents the Certificate of Appreciation to Dean Cecilio D. Duka for sharing his time and effort as speaker during the synchronous mandatory continuing legal education online seminar of IBP Cebu City and USJR School of Law towards the uplifting of the standards of the legal profession, imparting to us invaluable knowledge, insights, and expertise on the topic face-to-face versus online hearing given this 29th day of May 2021, Cebu City, Philippines. Signed, Attorney Jonathan Capanas, Dean of the School of Law of University of San Jose Recoletos, and yours truly is President of the IBP Cebu City Chapter. Daghang salamat, Dean. Why don't we give him another big round of applause?
Daghang salamat po. Ingat ka nunay.
And before you end and you leave, Dean, and come back later, we need to have a picture with you, which is a requirement at the end of your lecture. Again, everybody stay on, smile in the camera, and say, Duka!
Huwag maduka.
Wala gyud nagduka. Okay, we're done with our picture taking. Thank you very much, Dean. See you
Thank you
later
po.
at 5. Thank you very much.
See you po.